One of the new features found in a certain niche of the budget to moderately priced ham HT market is the addition of what is essentially a second radio chip married to a VHF UHF ham HT. That chip opens up receive capabilities in the shortwave, medium wave, and long wave frequency bands. The Radtel RT-880 is one of those radios, and it's the subject of today's video. The Radtel 880 comes in two versions, the RT-880 and the RT-880G. The G model includes a GPS receiver and some APRS capability. Since I have several GPS radios, I decided to save a few bucks and purchase the RT-880. The 880 is a sharp-looking radio with a nice black and gray color scheme and a 2.4-inch rectangular screen that's divided into 3 separate channel or VFO displays. The radio is a fairly complicated device with lots of menu choices to customize your radio experience. This includes the ability to act as a crossband repeater, display a spectrum scope, as well as do things most often found on recent radios, such as NOAA weather reception, airband reception, and with the RT-880G, GPS and APRS functionality. Let's take a look at what you'll find in the box. So here's the box that the Radtel 880 comes in. It's a nice little box. Let's take a look at what we find inside. First, in terms of charging, it comes with a desk cradle here, and it plugs in with a USB-C port here. So if you like desk cradles, this radio comes with one. This comes with a basic wall wart to plug in the USB-C cable. It's got an A on one side and a C on the other. And you can use this with any USB source to plug it in to the side of the radio, I'll show you in a minute, and charge directly to the radio if you prefer not to use the desk cradle. Now, in terms of security, it comes with a lanyard to wrap around your wrist and a belt clip that snaps into the back of the radio, and we'll see that here in just a second as well. And then last but not least, it comes with an antenna, and this is a dual-band antenna. So if you want to make use of the full range of some of the HF bands that are available on this radio, you'll need another antenna to cover that particular aspect. Next, we'll look at the owner's manuals for the RT-880. And so we've got the typical owner's manual. I'm liking this already in that the font is a little bit bigger. It's still a small-size manual, but the font is bigger. They make good use of bold print, and so for me, it's just easier to see than some of the other budget class radios. We've got the diagrams of what's here with the radio in terms of getting familiar with the radio. There's a chart here that explains what each of the keys do in some detail. Another chart that shows you what the icons are going to be on the LCD display. And then it goes into many of the functions of the radio. And again, the type is a little small, but it's easier to read than many. And then they've got these big charts that lists what the menus do. And so it says, you know, list of all menus, 1 through how many ever there are. And so the manual is pretty good. So let's do a quick power-off tour of the Radtel 880. We'll start here on the front. It's got a really large screen. That's because it'll display 3 different bands. We've got the green bar, which is essentially a menu. This is back, up and down for menu choices and for channel selections. We've got the keypad here with all the usual things. The hashtag does double duty as a VFO and memory switch tag. A short press on this will move it from display to display 1, 2, and 3, and so forth. And then you can see that the numbers here are there for adding frequencies, and then they've got letters on them, which means we're going to be able to add names to our channels using the keypad as you would an older style telephone when you were texting. Now, the other thing that is unique about this is that each of these 1 through 9 can be programmed to a function. Since the radio is fairly complicated and it's got a lot of functions, you can do quick keys that you get to choose yourself from a really fairly large list of options. Now, as we move over here, we can see we've got the push to talk up here. We've got side key here, side key there. We can program this to be a secondary push to talk if you choose. On the back, here's the clip for the belt clip, and you can see that it is on the battery itself. And then we roll over here, and we see that this is screwed down, and this is where you would normally find the K1. This one has a Motorola style, so it's got all that little pad of all the little dots on it underneath there. And then here, we've got the USB-C port right here, and you can use this to charge the device, or you can plug the programming cable into this, and it will allow you to connect it to your computer via the CPS that Radtel has. And the last of the accessories here is the programming cable, and it's got a Radtel branded cable with a USB-A on this side. It's got the chip in here, which I think is a CH340, and then a USB-C on this end to plug into the radio. So that's our power off tour of the Radtel 880. Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell to ensure you'll know when we release new videos. Now, while I sometimes receive radios to review, in this case I used channel earnings and purchased this RT-880. Before we jump into our Power On tour, let me call out a couple of interesting features you can take a look out for during the tour. First, the RT-880 has a segmented menu. As I mentioned already, there are lots of menu choices, and grouping them into related topics really helps when managing your radio. Next, for those of you who like a visual indicator of what's happening on the band, the Spectrum Scope is a pretty neat tool. While it's not as functional as a waterfall on a larger HF radio such as the FT710, the RT-880 scope can help you visualize band activity. Crossband repeat is also a fairly unique function. This allows you to use this higher power HT to extend the range for a group that might be helping with a community event or when out camping or hunting. You simply enable crossband repeat, choose a UHF and VHF frequency pair for your repeater, and then use an elevated antenna to give you and your group significantly greater radio coverage. Next is the expanded frequency range coverage. In terms of transmitting, the radio has transmit capability in the 18 to 32 megahertz range, 136 to 174 megahertz range, and the 400 to 520 megahertz range. The RT-880 will receive long wave from 153 to 279 kilohertz and medium wave from 520 to 710 kilohertz. That's the basic AM radio band here in the United States. It also receives shortwave from 2.3 to 30 megahertz, 64 to 108 megahertz for broadcast FM stations, as well as AM airband and NOAA weather channels, also found in the VHF band. And last for this short list, there are dual antenna connections. The connection on the left side of the radio is the transmit antenna connection. It's an SMA male connection like most budget class MHTs. The antenna under the center knob is a receive-only antenna connection. That connector is an SMA female connection. With this connection, you can use a long wire antenna, a loop antenna such as an MLA-30, or those little donut antennas that come with some of the small multiband receivers you find out on the market. It's this connection you'll need to make full use of reception in the shortwave, medium wave, and long wave bands. Now, let's jump into the Power On tour to check out these and other RT-880 features. So let's turn the radio on here. It takes a couple of seconds to boot up. We've got the on-off switch here at the top. We'll twist that on.
Channel mode.
So it comes on with a little voice, and then the three different bands that you can display here on the screen of the radio. I've done some programming on this, so we have something to look at. On the top, we've got room for some of the icons, depending upon what you have here. The top one here you see has a red A and the RSSI, which means this is the active band. It's got a name, it's got the number, and then the channel in small print down here. It's FM wide, and the power is high. And so down here, we're in the VFO mode on this display, and I've got a frequency dialed in. And then here on the bottom, I've got a third frequency dialed in. That's an airband frequency from around here. And so it says it's a VFO mode. It's AM, since that's the airband, and it's got wide bandwidth and high power. And so I'm getting some things receiving here on this top one, so you can see maybe that little RSI indicator is showing some activity. Now, if I press this, I can go down here. I move here. It says B up there now, so this doesn't move, but it does give you an indicator of which of the displays is active. And then if I go down here, it goes into C. This one is not permissible to transmit on. And so if we look at that, it says prohibit transmit because it's out of range, or it's not a transmittable frequency down there in the airband. So we've looked at a couple of these buttons. A long press on this will lock it. You saw the lock come up here. It goes off. We already know that this will move the little caret from display to display. A long press on the menu puts you into the DTMF area. A long press on the back button will take you out of that. And then we'll go into our menus here just real quick. So we've got a segmented menu system here, which is really handy, I think. So we've got basic settings. Here's where we can define these 0 through 9 plus all the side keys. You can make changes to your analog settings. And this is a carryover, or it's the same menu system as the 880G, which has APRS. And so you're going to see an APRS menu in here. That chip is not mounted in this radio, so it doesn't do APRS. But if we press again, we can go into our analog settings, and there you can see we've got squelch and tones and all kinds of the things you're used to seeing with these kind of radios. We go in down to channel settings. We can go into that. And then now all the things that we need to program a channel on the radio are here, to include, CTCSS, receive and transmit, frequency, encryption, mute code. Some of these things don't apply in ham radio, I think, various tail tones and so forth. And so the menu system is quite extensive, since the radio has a lot of variables that you can change. The extended menu has a lot of the optional features. You can set up radio frequencies for the broadcast FM in your area, as well as do some management of your zones here. And I've got 2 zones programmed in, my local VHF and my local UHF. Now, one of the things that most people are interested in getting is into the various modes. And so I've programmed a couple of my keys for that information. So if I do a long press on one, it gives me a spectrum scope. You can see that the frequency is 147.3. The instructions describe the keys you can use to make changes to these variables in terms of how quickly it spreads. Now, if I were to go to one of the other channels that had a different frequency in it, press 1, it would come up with that frequency up here, and it would be scanning in that area. Back key will take us out of that. A long press on 2 gives me a quick key into my zone, so I can go to my zone 1 or my zone 2. Again, a long press there will take us out of that and just back us out of the menus. And then a long press on 3 gives us our work range, and that's going to be an important one for you to have. And so you can see that right now my work range is from 64 to 620 megahertz. So this means this radio is basically a VHF, UHF radio. If I wanted to drop down into the high frequency range, then I would go down here and go from 18 megahertz to 64 megahertz. That would give me, 10 meters and some of those other frequencies down there, between 18 megahertz and 64 megahertz. And then if you wanted to move up into the higher frequencies, just below 1 gigahertz, then you could go into work zone number 3. So I'm going to stay in my primary work zone, but that's how you do it. And for me, the easiest way to do that is going to be by putting it onto a quick key so I can make those changes quickly and easily. Back out of the menus. So now I'm back into this. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you is that this antenna here is not going to work in that second work range where it's in HF. And this, unlike some radios where the second knob here is a channel select knob, that's not the case here. Here, you just kind of pull it up and it reveals an SMA plug here, again, female side. And this is where you would connect a radio antenna that would work in the HF bands. Now, since it's mainly receiving, there is some limited transmitting down there, but a long wire antenna would do that. So if you had a little adapter with an SMA on one side and, you know, an alligator clip on the other that you could clip it to a long wire, or any of the other kinds of receive antennas that are available, you're going to need that for this radio to work in those lower frequency bands, and that's hiding there under this particular knob, and that covers it up tight to keep dirt from getting in there and for the connector to be damaged. So that's just a quick overview of some of the key features here in our Power On Tour. The RT-880 is advertised as a 10-watt radio. Let's put it on the power meter and see what we get. So here I'm on my MFJ874 power meter. I've got the range selected at the 20-watt range. It seems to be a little more accurate on this particular meter, plus the radio is supposed to output more than 10 watts. We'll see here in just a second. So we're going to be reading the watt output or the power output on the second arc from the bottom. So we'll start in the 2-meter range. This is a 2-meter call channel on high power. And it looks to be about 7.9, right about 8 watts of power there on the 2-meter band. That's not too bad. Let's go up a channel. Let's now look at the UHF band. And so this is in the 440 area on the call channel up there. Again, second arc from the bottom, high power. It's a little lower. It's about 4.8, 4.9 watts. And then last but not least, let's take a look at the 1.25 meter. And I'm expecting this to be lower still, but we'll see. Here it is, high power, the 1.25 meter call channel. And it's about 1/10 of a watt. So while the radio does output there, it doesn't really output anything worthwhile. So probably not even rated to output in this particular area. Connects to that display on the signal purity where the primary is just barely above the 0 dB mark. So not bad power here in 2-meter and 440. One of the things I check with new radios is signal purity. Let's put the RT-880 on the Tiny SA Ultra and see what we find there. So I've got the radio connected to my Tiny SA Ultra. I've got it set up to measure harmonics at 146.52. The little blue line is the line that harmonics need to be under, representing 25 microwatts. So let's see what we got. I'm going to be using medium power on the radio for this test. And so we've got 2-meter with medium power. Here we go. We'll let this scan through a couple of times for the data to stabilize. We've got a fairly large range here in the Tiny SA Ultra. And so you can see this looks like it's pretty clear. We've got a little bit of harmonic there in about the 700 range, but it is below the 1604 and it's 43 below the fundamental. So clean radio in that regard. Okay, so I've reprogrammed the Tiny SA to the 1.25 meter call. Again, we're measuring harmonics. The lowest one there is where the frequency is on the radio, and then these are the divisions of the harmonics, and that 16.02 or minus 16.02 line is right there. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, up here you can see I've got a dummy load in there for minus 40 dB to avoid damaging the Tiny SA. And so let's see what we get here on 1.25 meters. Again, we'll go through this a couple of times to let the data be measured as it scans through. And you can see this one is a pretty clean radio as well. This harmonic is 35 below. This one's 37 below, so technically not 40, but well below the amount here of the fundamental. We'll wrap this up with some audio from a nearby airport.
Note taxiway Bravo 11 closed permanently. Taxiway Bravo between taxiway Bravo 9 and Bravo 11 closed. Taxiway Bravo 9 runway guard light, runway 7 left 25 right unserviceable. Runway 25 right, runway identifier light unserviceable. Use caution for multiple cranes in the vicinity of Radtel Airport. Vehicle aircraft device ground control direction of flight. Arrivals from south, contact tower 118.4. Arrivals from north, contact tower 120.2. Advise on this for contact. Do you have information, Charlie? And Airson 4589, traffic to follow left base to funnel from the north side. 2001 are heading to your right, it's yours. Number 4951 November, Dubai Tower, make right traffic, runway 7 right. Information, Charlie's current, I heard full stop south side. Right traffic 7 right, we have Charlie, and full stop arching south side, affirmative 5 on November.
Well, what did you think? Be sure to leave a comment with what you did or didn't like. I'd be especially interested in hearing from you if you already have an RT-880. I hope you found this video worthwhile. Again, be sure to like and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. I really appreciate it. Join me over here for another video I think you'll like or my amateur radio playlist. Thanks for watching, and 73.